Well, just a reminder for those who were here last week, and just to kind of set up everything for this week, is we're talking about what does the gospel look like here and now? That it's not just something in the future. It's not just that we're going to be with God forever, but that he says for his kingdom to come here on earth now. And so we're kind of using that as the framework for our class. And we've asked a number of different people from the lower ninth ward here in New Orleans who are doing that work each and every single day in a lot of different ways. But we want to remember as we're studying, it's not just looking at them and praising them for all that they've done, which you could definitely do for a very long time, as you'll get to hear. But it's really beginning to take that information, seeing how they did that, asking the difficult questions and saying, okay, so how can I do that in my daily life as well? Your context is going to look different. It's going to feel different. There's going to be different challenges, both in your life as well as in the lives of the people that you're working with. But we're all called to that same thing of bringing the good news to the people around us. And so this evening, we are welcoming Dr. Leona Tate and Ms. Tremaine Knighten-Riley to speak with us. They both work with the Leona Tate Foundation for Change here in the lower ninth ward. And we're going to be specifically focusing on their work in equity and education. And so that's really the passion of their hearts. And so they're going to kind of give you a lot more information than what I ever could. But Leona Tremaine, who wants to start to give us the background?
Nice.
I was going to volunteer, Miss Tate.
Okay.
You should be the last one to hear from. Good evening, everybody. I'm Tremaine. As Sarah said, I work with the Leona Tate Foundation, specifically in programming. I've been with the organization since its founding in 2009 officially, and have been working alongside Dr. Tate to make the Tate Etienne and Prevost Center, TEP for short, a reality over the past couple of years. We have numerous things going on at the TEP Center, but I think I'm supposed to give a little bit of background about me, right?
And you didn't just hatch out of an egg and start deciding I'm going to go do this with the rest of my life. Like this came from somewhere.
I am the daughter and granddaughter of educators, and I never wanted to be an educator, and somehow I wound up doing exactly that. I'm happy to have retired from the classroom in 2020 due to COVID, but I consider myself very lucky to be able to educate people about the history of the New Orleans Civil Rights Movement, specifically school desegregation, every day at through foundation work at the TEP Center. I grew up on the West Bank of New Orleans, so not about 20 minutes from the lower ninth ward where I work, but I've always had connections to the ninth ward. My mother's from the ninth ward, grew up in New Orleans Parish schools, and then went on to teach in Orleans Parish schools. So I've been around education and activism and all of the things for my entire life, and didn't know until I had a chance meeting of working in the same space as this. She's in the middle of my screen here. This younger lady back in 2006 at the lab where we worked, and then it blossomed into a friendship, and then we've been working together since then. And so that's a little bit about me, but I'm going to turn over the floor to Dr. Leona Tate so she can tell you how she opened up all of this.
Well, like somebody told me when I got started, I was opening up a can of worms. So I did. But in 1960, 2 New Orleans public schools were desegregated. And I was one of the little girls that were entrusted to do that. And on November 14th this year, we'll be 64 years. And we'll be celebrating that anniversary, as always. But I'm not an educator. Didn't come from anybody that was an educator. I just had parents that talk. When they talk, you listened. And what I did was because I had to be obedient to what they said. And at 6 years old, you don't think about equality in education, anything around you. You just do what you're told to do. I was going to a new school. I knew that. And I was excited to be going to a new school because I hated my old school. It was an all-black school. It was very overcrowded with terrible material. So when I found out and understood that I would be going to a new school that I saw all the time because it was in my community. My old school took me 11 blocks to walk to get there. There was an application that was passed in the newspaper, placed in the Times-Picayune for children of the Ninth Ward to register or to apply to be the children to desegregate a public school. My mother did, and she applied. Out of 140 families, only 5 families were chosen, but only 4 families participated. So that left 3 of us at McDonald 19, which is now the TEP Center, and 1 little girl at William France. And I'm sure everybody know the story of Ruby Bridges. But it all happened on the same day. We had to go to the school that in the district where we lived. That day started out being a very normal day. It just seemed like everybody was at my house was on one accord. We was all doing something to prepare me to leave that day. And all of a sudden, a black car pulled up in front of the door, and I was getting a ride with U.S. Marshals to go to school. And I can remember my mother telling me, when you get in the car, sit to the back of the seat and don't put your face to the window. And when I say we had to be obedient, that was one step right there. We had to listen. So when we arrived in front of the school, there were masses of people in front of the school. I did not pick up on everybody being white. Everybody being white. All right, I'm gonna get it. Go tell Papa. The color just didn't matter to me. I would assume, it's just looked familiar to me because I knew a parade passed on that street, and that's what I related it to. I thought a parade was coming. And I asked my mother why I had to go to school and everybody else was watching the parade. And she said, that's not the case. I did not pick up on the anger of the crowd. So we were escorted into the school building and tried to register, as you do at that time at the principal's office. And we were asked to take a seat on the bench. We sat on that bench practically half the day before they even decided to place us in the classroom. But once we were placed, all the white parents removed their children from school. So that left the 3 of us in that entire building alone for 1.5 years. Fast forward a little bit, never thought I would be behind that building. But after Katrina, when we were allowed to go back in that area, it was a must that I go see the building just to see what it looked like, because we were very sentimental to that building. And looking at it from the outside, it seemed fine. And I found out during that time that they were only going to bring 1 school back to the lower Ninth Ward. And that wasn't right. So my first interest was to try to get it open up as a school again. So then the Orleans Parish School Board denied that. They didn't want to, they didn't want to reopen it as a school. So I knew that if they tore it down or did anything else, the history there would be lost. The school board did not remember the history of that building. And that was during the time when I met Tremaine, and we just had to take steps to do what we could to acquire that building, because after it couldn't be a school again, I knew we needed to do something to make it an educational center. We had it placed on the National Historic Registry, and that was one of the steps to keep them from tearing it down. And then we got to own the building as of January 31st, 2021. And
right before COVID hit, the week before COVID hit.
No, that was after. The week before COVID hit, we had the groundbreaking.
Okay.
Oh, wait, it might have been. It might have been. I'm screwed up with the dates now. I don't know.
Close enough.
But
2020.
yeah, we did our groundbreaking that Monday, and the world was shut down that weekend. So that was COVID. But we're now operating. The building has been developed. It's now an interpretive center where people can come in and take a tour and walk through the building just as we entered it. Watch a film of those days, which wish we could have showed that film tonight, and get to speak with me at the end and ask their questions. But it took a lot. It took a lot of, not really a lot, because we got in touch with the right developer. We were introduced to the right developer. It took 16 funders to develop that building. It was $16.2 million. It was $879 to buy it. They didn't give it to us. We had to buy it. And it's been a lot. And but to me, that building is there because I felt like we were introduced to racism there. And I feel like that should be the place where it ends. I welcome everybody, no matter what your race is, what color, what age, what bracket you're in, to come and visit. You'd be surprised to see how many people just was not aware or did not know that history.
That was what surprised me when I first learned the story, that the school board didn't even know, that genuinely the history was kind of lost for a very long time until you brought that to them.
They just didn't communicate. And we saw that because the superintendent position changed during the time that we were trying to acquire that building so many times. But the next person in line, even though we had gone to talk, we had wrote letters, did not know what was going on. And they just didn't. It took a lot for us to do a presentation there to get them to remember. I think it was only one member that could remember, because most of them were younger. They didn't know. They didn't know, and were never told.
So Tremaine, jumping in, so after you got the building and you started to look around and say, okay, so what are we going to do on a day-to-day basis? Because does anybody know the difference between a museum and an interpretive center? Because I didn't know, and
We did not. We did not. We had to learn that too. We did not. We kept saying museum. So we were introduced to Gallagher and Associates, which is our design team. They did this design, and they're the same people that did design team for World War II. They made us understand if we say the museum, what things we needed to do. For one thing, we can't archive. We have no place to archive. So that was one downfall right there. So we couldn't say museum. But we knew it had to be something educational. So we came up with an interpretive center.
And I think we really settled on interpretive center because the exhibition that is planned is really interpreted from the three of y'all's memories. And so helping folks to understand your experience through these interactive exhibits is really what our focus is. And how did we decide what it was going to be every day? We are still.
How did you decide the programs? Because your programs really determine each day what is done there in the space. How did you get to that point?
Well, our primary program, of course, is daily tours. And that takes on two forms. One is, we have visitors who just come and want to tour the space, but also we have a really great focus on getting kids into the TEP Center. So through field trips, we had a great spring with schools in New Orleans, and now we're getting ready to start summer camp trips. And so really tailoring presentations and programming for learners between the ages of 7 and beyond. But our school trips and our student trips are really where we think we gather all hands on deck, because I think that's we're hoping that that is going to be the most impact to helping to further the learning of the history and understanding the role that not only Ms. Tate, Ms. Gail, and Tessie made in their journey in desegregating the schools, but how that relates to what is happening currently, and how can you use those lessons that you see demonstrated by their courageousness in your daily lives. I want to say, Leona, because I know you, so you fast forwarded, but you fast forwarded from 1962 all the way to 2020. There's
Well,
a
the story,
whole life
it
in
was the
between there.
same every year after that. It was a lot. It's a lot. It was a lot.
So one of the things that I hope that this group would understand is after second grade, McDonough 19 became reclassified as a school for only Black children. So because Leona, Gail, and Tessie had gone through this weeding out and kind of very arduous psychological process to be prepared, they were then used again to desegregate third grade at another elementary school, and then to junior high, and then to high school. So their integration process was the entire 10 years of their schooling.
It took 10 years. It took 10 years. They would not open it up to all grades. They progressed integration as we progressed the grade. But once we reached 10th grade, then it opened to 11th and 12th grade.
And the question I always get when people are doing tours is, why do you think that that was decided to do that?
I think somewhere down the line they thought we would fail. And that comes across my mind a lot. If we would have failed, what would have happened?
I think that as well, but I also think that if you did it progressively, then there was time to overturn it. So okay, we didn't get to get them in by the time they got to fifth grade, but we could get them before they get to high school. And
because it was an active fight against you all the entire time.
Definitely. I found the court records that year in those library where they were still going to court to overturn it after we were already in school for years. They were trying to overturn it. Some of the records were torn out. I guess they didn't want to be incriminated with some of the information, but they really tried hard not to let it work.
Well, and isn't that still the argument that is being used for school vouchers in Louisiana today?
Mm-hmm.
For those of you who don't know, in the state of Louisiana, just last week, they passed school vouchers again, which this goes back to what I talked about last week, where as you begin to unravel the conversations, you have to dig further. Because on the outsides, why wouldn't it be great for parents to be able to decide where their kids went? But if we look back at the history of why did all of those private schools open? Why did all of these schools become in existence to begin with? It started with desegregation. Mm-hmm. And so those private schools that are in Louisiana are white. And so mostly. You begin to say, mostly. Thank you.
And I also say even the ones that are not are the ones that have closed or lost funding.
Right.
So everybody, I don't know if everybody knows this, but everybody in New Orleans is Catholic, even if you're not Catholic. So many folks at some point have gone to Catholic school. But there becomes a distinction when you go to a Catholic high school and versus a white Catholic high school versus there are 3 predominantly Black Catholic high schools. But the elementary schools, there were church schools, and because the church demographics were mostly African American, the schools were mostly African American. Well, those schools many of those schools have now closed because the Archdiocese has said that they can no longer support the operations of those schools. Okay, so why do we make concessions for some? Because there are some white schools that have the same enrollment and they are not closing. They are, and now they have churches that are merging together because the archdiocese can't support the multiple churches. So all of that is all part of the same conversation. And so I think we always need to kind of remember that in context as well.
Gotta dig deeper. Oh, so we have the school tours. That's one of the programs, but you don't just work in equity of education for the students coming. Forgot about this. Leona, I wanted this is one of the stories I've heard you tell. But what would you say to people who are fighting against these kind of stories being told in schools? You have white kids, you have black kids, you have Latino kids, you have every kind of kid coming through the TEP Center. What do you say to people when they say, but it's not okay for kids to be learning this?
What I would say to them, I can't tell y'all on this computer. No, it's always a why. You know why? Because let's not be embarrassed of what happened in those years. Let's talk about it, and that's what I want at the TEP Center. We invite those protesters. We invite those that have that ill feeling still. Let's see where that came from. You didn't born with that. We were not born with that. And it's just for them not wanting to teach it in schools is. I think all children need to know their history, no matter what race they are. Everybody has a history. But if it's not being taught or somewhere where they can understand it, how are they going to know?
Mhm.
Our children are running rampant because they don't know what to do with themselves. They don't know what. But when they come to the center, they come in one way and they leave out a whole another way. And we've seen that
You had
because they
the
really think
one little girl
they
from St. George's is the one that sticks out in my mind. Can you tell that story?
yeah
Just as an
yeah.
example.
St. George is a predominantly white private school, and they had a problem with a little white girl called a little black boy the N-word, but they didn't know what to do about it, so they called us and wanted to get some help, I guess. And we invited them to the TEP Center, and they came. And they took the tour. They don't see me till after they see the film. They don't see me. And I
Well, because
went
they
in to
all think
talk
that
to.
you're 200 years old, right?
Yeah, they think what I did was during slavery, And so when I come there, they see a ghost when I walk through the door because that's what their faces look like. But for some reason, I kind of picked her out of the group without her saying anything. But she followed me the entire day throughout the tour, and finally she said, "We're here because I did something bad."
Mm.
But by the time she left, I knew her whole family history. I knew everything about her. She was very sorry for what she had done. She didn't understand what she had done.
Mhm.
She really didn't. That's how I felt. She didn't really understand.
That was a word and probably a conversation that she had heard adults
Right.
having, and really, like you said, she didn't have a real context and real understanding of what was going on. And then to see, and I don't know if you remember because the child who she said it, and it was like nothing was between them actually.
Mm.
Right.
Mm.
It didn't phase him one bit.
At
It just
all.
not
They
at
were just
all.
throwing it around.
And
But it
and
upset the school. The school
right.
is, and I'm on a committee with them, still trying to justify that, trying to see what they can do to avoid that. All the money in the world is not going to help them.
Mhm.
We got to talk.
Well, one of the incredible things I think about the St. George thing is it started there, but it
Mhm.
has progressed on for each of the different grade levels. And I was in the room, I was working at one point, and Tremaine got a phone call from the teacher and saying, well, this particular class has already been there. So what else can we do? How else can we encourage them?
Mhm.
How else can we expand their education? So it's not just like the fact that you guys took the phone call and was like, this is what's happening between these two students, and the school was willing to reach out, but then they were also, Dr. Tate was going to take a trip with the students to the Whitney plantation
Mhm.
that's nearby. And so the interpretive center expands not just to that particular moment in history, but so much broader, so much further, because of these two incredible women, just their personalities, but also because they're intentional about what they're doing. When people ask of them things, they continue to kind of change and transform how they're going to program. So, Tremaine, that brings me back to my question I was going to ask you. So what other programs do you have? How else have you responded to the needs of equity in education?
So the two things that we're trying to put more focus on this year is specifically our TEP Talks, doing more of those. And TEP Talks are, hour-long conversations that bridge the gap between the 60s civil rights movement and current social justice issues that we're facing today, and inviting different folks who have insight about various topics to come and sit down. The two that we've done, Dr. Tate and one of the teachers, and this is a whole backstory in its own, but when you did the conversation with Richard Bunce, so Richard Bunce, he is the son of a former Orleans Parish teacher who was called the Friday before the integration to report to McDonough 19, just in case none of the teachers agreed to teach Leona, Gail, and Tessie.
They had received a telegram that morning, all of the teachers, stating that if they didn't come to work, they wouldn't have a job. So when all of the students left, there were teachers in every classroom, but they had no students because they had to come to work.
For a year and a half, they were in their classrooms by themselves,
For a year and a
willing
half.
to teach anybody.
Right. But we had a very good teacher, I grew up thinking she wasn't from New Orleans, but she was, so I know she caught a lot of flack when she left school, but she gave us a wonderful education. Wonderful.
And
she was more motherly than a teacher, really.
So that memory of Miss Myers, but not knowing kind of who Mrs. Bunce was. And we learned just during construction, the end of construction, that Mrs. Bunce was actually helped Mrs. Myers prepare the lessons for the three girls. And she had older children, so they were seeing the events of 1960 from a totally different perspective as high school students. So we had one of our TEP Talks, Leona talked about her family, how they kind of grappled with the 1960s events and how they experienced it, and then versus Mr. Bunce, who talked about how his family experienced it and kind of the different trajectories that their families kind of then went on from 1960 until present. But I thought it was very interesting that you had lived this experience, and this was a character in your story that you had no idea existed until 3 years ago. But that's how the stories begin to unfold, and I think that's really the purpose of the TEP Talks. It's how do these stories, we keep telling different stories, and they teach different lessons. And so if you just keep listening, you keep talking, eventually there's going to be some things that can be shared across the table. And so that's the real crust of what the TEP Talk is about. And then my baby is the Ringing the Bell, which is professional development for teachers. It started out as a program designed to honor the tricentennial for New Orleans, and where we wanted to do a one-time presentation for teachers who were not from New Orleans, who had been, for lack of a better word, thrown into New Orleans schools. And to really,
for those of you who don't know, after Katrina, there was a huge influx of people who came. If you had a degree of any sort, you could come and get basically certified to be a teacher like that. And all of these really naive 22-year-old white kids showed up into a post-Katrina
But
experience.
that,
And
but it was because they had fired
right,
all of the old teachers.
right. They completely fired 100% of the teaching force.
Why? Why?
So,
Somebody asked why.
yeah. So
Do you want the answer that is politically correct, or you want
Yeah.
the opinion question?
the
That's the
claim
look you're
was
getting.
that the Orleans Parish School Board was bankrupt. But it was bankrupt because they had done some really shady things. But in kind of dismantling the school system and that veteran teacher and the buddy program that Leona always talks about, where you had seasoned teachers mentoring new teachers and really understanding the culture of the different schools in the different neighborhoods, because prior to Katrina, most students still went to school in their neighborhood. Now, since we have a 99% charter system, we have one district school that will reopen next year. Now you go to school wherever, and so that dismantles neighborhoods. And families are not necessarily siblings are not attending the same schools. So all of that is breaking down the fabric of the neighborhood and the family. But when
we talked about last week the importance of community and neighborhood in the lower Ninth Ward in particular, and that's how the activism and how the lower Ninth Ward was such a strong community. And you're beginning to, as I also mentioned last week, asking more questions. How did we get where we are? And that's what Tremaine is very much so talking about, the behind the scenes.
Yeah. And so my goal with the Ringing the Bell presentation in 2018 was to say, okay, here are some things that you can do in your classroom that can help you to, one, create a sense of belonging for all students and have an opportunity to learn more about culturally what they bring to their education process.
First, you tested them on the culture.
Yes.
The first thing they did was took a test.
Took a quick New Orleans test. If you,
I need to see this test. I've not seen this.
Yeah. And they all failed. They all failed.
Oh, did anybody even get any of them?
Maybe one or two, but it
so
wasn't
what?
me.
You know the one that got right?
What?
What's the signature cocktail?
Oh, that's embarrassing. Oh, that's embarrassing. Okay.
But it also showed that these are things, but these are things that folks should kind of know when they're coming into the space. Just a little bit of general history. Okay, we should know that school desegregation for elementary schools happened in New Orleans. We should know that Plessy versus Ferguson is in New Orleans. We should know the kind of the building of the Southern Christian Leadership, SCLC, was founded in New Orleans. Those are, and it doesn't matter kind of where your background is, because those are stories that relate to wherever you came from. And so that really kind of showed, okay, well, let's look at these particular things. And what I did was create a curriculum that aligned with the social studies standards to be able to teach New Orleans history through the standards that all K through 12 students need to know for social studies. And so now we're in the process of expanding that into the other subject areas. But the first presentation, we only had a few attendees, and we were a little bit disappointed. But then what happened? One of the attendees was
they
the
weren't
leader.
teachers; they were like directors.
Yeah.
Is this the AmeriCorps program?
It's Teach for America.
Teach for America.
So then we expanded the program so that all of the teachers who came into the cohort for the next 2 cycles attended our workshop. So we didn't do our own separate thing. We were presenters in their cohort training. And I think that helped to kind of create a groundwork for us to build connections. And that's how we built connections with the schools, because teachers who attended those first sessions now are in elementary, middle school, and high school schools. And those are the teachers who are bringing their classes to the TEP Center. So it just keeps giving.
I think what I love, and I hope others here as well, is when you first started, you thought it was going to be one thing. You know, when your parents started, Leona, they just thought, I'm sending my 6-year-old to school and we're going to desegregate.
They didn't know it was going to be they thought it was a local issue. They didn't really think of it broad as it went. You know, it went nationwide. You know,
right?
They did not know that, and I don't think anybody else made them. Well, I don't think nobody else knew it either. You know, it happened.
Right.
And when you got family members, you know, they didn't release our names or anything, but when you got family members that recognize you in other states, then you know it went far. Yeah.
But God knew through that willingness, you know, it's being, so last week we talked about the widow of Zarephath, and that Elijah came and asked for the oil and the flour. And so often we want to hand God the full loaf baked already. Like we want to have the entire plan already there, but God just asks us to bring the oil and the flour. And look at all that God has done through your parents' faithfulness to just bring the oil and the flour. And then further, you know, you didn't have to step up and do anything. You know, you could have left the building as is, and yet you offered. And Tremaine the same way. Like you didn't have to when you showed up. Like you thought, no education, never, I'm not doing this. I'm going to go into, you should, Tremaine knows a lot about science. Should ask her about her fly study at some point. She has a thing with flies. But all you did was you offered the oil and the flour, and look at all that God is doing. But they didn't know the end of the story when they started. You didn't know where that couple teachers showing up for the ringing of the bell was going to turn into an entire curriculum for all of the schools in New Orleans. You didn't know, you know, you showed up, you wanted a school put back in the lower 9th ward, and look at what it has become. Dr. Tate was actually just in DC, last week, speaking before the Department of Justice and before the Department of Education, and I'm sure you pinch yourself sometimes.
It was May 17th, on the anniversary of Brown versus the Board of Education.
Yeah. But so with all that being said, as people that are starting their journey, starting with, okay, we're bringing God's kingdom here to earth, what would be some words of wisdom that you would offer to each of us that are kind of starting out on our journey like this?
Don't worry that the whole plane is not built. Just get in the cockpit. The rest of it will come.
Just stay focused on the Lord, because I know that's what got us where we are. I know that's what got us where we are. But don't give up. Please don't give up, because I could have given up quite a few times. Grandma, jeez. Look at you.
Hi, Demi.
This is our third coworker.
And I ask when the students come, just stay focused. You know, you have the opportunity to take advantage of anything you offer. Just do that. Don't say, well, I can't do that. No, you can do anything you want to do these days, you know. And I always tell them, if you have a problem, come get me. Just come get me. I'll help you.
And I'm sure some of them take you up on it.
I know they do.
But with all that, I know we have about 10 minutes before we're going to break into small groups. I don't know if we can if we want to try to pull that video up one more time, or if we want to take questions, or Ben, I'm going to kind of leave that up to you, what you think.
There you go. You want to email it to me? I'm going to try and send it. You did send it to me.
I have to get down because you can't.
I can try to do that. Yeah.
You got to get down because you can't make no noise up here on the phone.
Yours is Ben
Spangler. Kelly already sent it. You're good. Sarah, Kelly already sent
What?
it. Kelly already sent it.
Oh. It is difficult to hear, I must admit. Okay, let's see if we can get this video up and you guys can get a better picture of the TEP Center and hear some more of the story. But we can take questions while they're doing that. Why don't we do that? Does anybody have any questions or comments?
I have a question. This is Bob. So as you moved on to integrating another school, did the same situation occur where all the parents took all their kids out, or did it become something where they left their kids in?
Now, in third grade, we really faced integration. They didn't take their kids out. We didn't have the marshals or the police protection anymore either. We endured a lot at third grade. I hate to talk about third grade. It was just, I don't wish that on anybody's child. Nobody's child. And the division stayed the same. Oh, we got it?
All right, we'll see if I got this working.
All about racism. That's cool. Third word of New Orleans.
I don't hear any sound.
Yeah.
Okay. And then, Leona, while they're still going, do you want to talk a little bit about high school? Because high school is a little different.
My high school was Francis Chi Nichols. Their mascot was Rebels, and they honored a Confederate flag. So, of course, the tension was just as bad there. It was always fighting going on, and it just was really chaotic. When I got in my junior year, we requested to have the mascot changed. It took a couple of politicians to come in and help us do that, but the rides were terrible. They were terrible. It just was just to walk in that building in the morning time and try to start a day of school was you had to just be careful of where you wound up, because no telling what could happen. But they did change it, and that started a lot of white flight again. But we had quite a few left that stayed there, and so. But we had a white prom and we had a black prom. Nothing got together until we got in 12th grade, and it seemed to be a little better. But I can never say in 12 years I had a white friend. I never did. I'm on the phone. You want to get down?
Well, and at one point, they also wanted you to salute the rebel flag too, right? Is that what you had said?
Oh yeah, during when you had maybe a program going on in the auditorium or something, they wanted everybody to stand and honor that, but we wouldn't do that. So that caused a lot of suspensions, a lot of detentions, and just crazy stuff that they just expected us to take. But I just didn't think it was fair. But I had to go home for a while because I think my mom was kind of worried about the danger, because it was pretty dangerous. One of our classmates got shot, and I was out of school for a little while, so it kind of quieted down a little bit. But I can tell you this: it was always a massive fighting, and it was dangerous. It was real dangerous. It was. You had to run for your life sometimes. We get on my foot.
Well, that was the wrong thing. How do I play the video instead of the advertisement? Click to return.
Click that button.
An incredible story of
There we
courage for
go.
Black history.
There we go.
Stories of three girls who helped change history 62 years ago. At 6 years old, they desegregated their New Orleans school the same morning as Ruby
I'm
Bridges
listening.
integrated a different school just blocks away. But their story has often gone untold. Jamie
Shut up
Watson,
right now.
he met with the pioneers who are nicknamed the McDonough Three after the school they integrated. They talked about the heroism and why they've returned to their school to make history once again.
It was Integration Day today for the first grades of 2 New Orleans elementary schools.
It was a short walk, but perhaps one of the most historic. Alongside U.S. Marshals, 3 little girls stepping foot into McDonough 19 Elementary in New Orleans to desegregate schools in the state for the very first time, creating national impact.
Local police in large numbers were on hand to see that integration took place without trouble.
On the morning of November 14, 1960, 6-year-olds Leona Tate, Gail Etienne, and Tessie Prevost were met by the roars of protesters.
What was your sense as a child walking past all of that? Did you know it was directed to you?
With the way they were hollering and making noises, I thought if they could have got to me, they would have killed me. They were angry with me, and I didn't know why. At 6 years old, I didn't understand why they were acting like that.
My daddy told me in the car, he said, look straight ahead, take my hand, and I'm here. And I wasn't afraid. For some reason, I just wasn't afraid. I felt protected with my daddy.
And then one by one, every single student left except for the 3 of you. Every single student.
Every single.
But the teachers stayed.
Yeah. They had received a
All the
telegram that
teachers.
morning telling them if they didn't report to school, they would be
All the
fired.
teachers had to stay.
No violence, but plenty of vocal abuse.
For the rest of the year, Tate, Etienne, and Prevost remained the only students in the entire school.
Ruth Nell Bridges has to go to school.
But the media's attention was on first grader Ruby Bridges, who desegregated William Franz Elementary School in the same city on the same day.
Somehow the world knows Ruby Bridges. You were sort of forgotten in the mix. Did you feel that way?
Oh, yeah. Oh, yeah. You know, because just knowing what we went through, you know, and for people not to remember that was hurtful.
They hold no resentment toward Bridges. They forged on, but will never forget the abuse they faced in the other integrated schools they attended throughout childhood.
In that first year, I was on nerve medicine for a while.
As a child?
As a child, at 6 years old, yes. At Sims, I got hit in the stomach with a baseball bat. And the teachers didn't do anything about it. The principal, nobody. It was like it didn't happen. Got beat up in the classroom, spit on us, spit in our food.
In a way, there's no possible ability anyone has to express or discuss what you 3 have shared as a shared experience. I mean, that's a very special bond.
Oh, yes, it is.
Oh, yeah, it is.
Sisters for life.
It is.
Their sisterhood brought them back to the school 62 years later, this time with a new mission.
And this is the same door.
The Leona Tate Foundation for Change recently purchased the school, transforming the building that's been vacant since Hurricane Katrina into an educational space that opened just a few months ago. It's called the TEP Center, a nod to their 3 initials.
We are sitting here in the school that the 3 of you came to as 6-year-olds. Tell me about reclaiming this space for what it is now.
This center is to educate those that didn't know about the integration and the desegregation of public schools. And if you feel like you're a part of that, this is the place you come to try to solve that problem.
Oh, wow. This is the classroom.
This is the classroom.
Visitors can step foot into the original classroom the girls were confined to in 1960, the only room they were allowed to sit in.
This class was full of students when we got here. But in a matter of a few minutes, they were all gone.
Upstairs, the top 2 floors of the building have been converted to apartments for seniors, like Richard Johnson, the first resident to move in.
When I come through them doors, them glass doors, and I'm inside, this is like heaven. This is a spot only. This is a special spot. This is special.
Do you feel a sense of the history of this space?
Oh, trust me, I do. It's like a caterpillar turning to a cocoon and then it turns to the butterfly. That's what happened. It's beautiful.
This caterpillar of a building has only grown with time. What started as the center of pain for 3 little girls has turned into one of hope for the 3 women today. In fact, November 14th has officially been declared New Orleans 4-Day in the city, recognizing the heroism of all 4 trailblazers whose short walk led to lasting change.
I'll ask each of you, would you do it again if you had to do it again?
Yes, I would. Yes, I would.
All 3 of you.
It made it better. It opened up doors, opportunities for other people. So somebody had to make the sacrifice, and I guess it was the 3 of us.
The chosen ones.
The chosen ones.
Yes.
Many people are hoping to get that date, November 14th, nationally recognized as New Orleans 4-Day. And I have to say, guys, on a personal note, my own first grader goes to an incredibly diverse public school in New Orleans, more diverse than the one she would go to in New York City. Think about that for a minute, thanks to the sacrifices of the New Orleans 4 and their families. Just unbelievable.
Wow. Jamie, I have never heard of these women before, never heard this story. Thank you so much just for educating all of us about that. And it's heartbreaking to look at those little girls. I love the little black patent leather shoes and the little white ruffle socks. Everybody I know had one of those. The bravery that it took at that time, and they don't even know why it was so vitriolic. Just looking at the hatred of the people's faces, taunting at them, screaming at them, and their little girls not knowing, why are you treating us this way? What a story.
Yeah, it's a powerful piece.
It's an incredible reflection on our society to watch that through the eyes of an innocent child, right?
Exactly. And that's why these stories need to be told.
Yeah,
Thank you, Jamie Wack.
Really lovely piece. Well done. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
What school does his kid go to?
I think Audubon.
I don't know if he told us the name of the school. I don't remember if he did.
It's either Audubon or one of the ISFs.
Okay. I was going to say, because unfortunately, not all of the schools in the city are still integrated.
The only school that I went to and saw that there was, I can say 50-50 was Bricolage.
Okay.
And I was shocked that day when I got there.
Yeah. ISL West Bank, I can't speak to the other campuses, but ISL West Bank is similar. Yeah. But any other questions?
The fact that we are calling names of schools tells us that we still have the problem.
Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah. I have a question. This is Mo from Florida. You know, Florida's education has become political, and what teachers can teach and what students can read has become very problematic, and legislation has tried to, I guess these book bans has happened. Have you all faced that? And do you have difficulty with what you're doing there at the center?
Well, if we may be with the students coming in, but we are facing the same thing in the schools. They don't want to teach it or put it in the thing. But as soon as the center is up and par with our exhibits, we're going to ask that the center be a part of the curriculum if they don't want to teach it in the schools. Yeah, we're facing the same problem.
I was going to say, there's also a difference between what's happening in all of Louisiana, and then you have what's happening in New Orleans. Those policies that you're talking about in Florida, the ones in Louisiana mimic them. And in fact, Louisiana is trying to outrace you guys in how extreme we can pass things. This isn't education, but they just passed 2 weeks ago that all the 10 commandments have to be posted in every single classroom. And my husband is a teacher here in New Orleans, and they're literally having the conversations of what they're going to do in order to help the other students that are in their classes, you know, to still feel welcome and accepted, even though they might not personally ascribe to the Christian faith. They also passed that the 2 medications that are used for women who are having miscarriages, they can also be used for abortion, that they are now scheduled for drugs. And so Louisiana is trying to outpace. I got a call 2 weeks ago from the library. I have to go in and change the restrictions on my kids' library cards because they're banning the books in the libraries. So Louisiana's right there, and the TEP Center is at the forefront of trying to fight against it.
We're trying to create a space to be able to talk openly about it. And one of the things that I share, we have a tremendous amount of autonomy at the TEP Center because we are not a government funded entity. And if we had, if we were state run or federally run, we wouldn't have some of the kind of struggles, day-to-day operational struggles, but it also would cause us to be very contained in the stories and the conversations that we could have. One quick thing, we ran the Lower Ninth Ward Living Museum prior to opening the TEP Center. And that museum was a 6-room shotgun house that was a powerful tribute to the history of the Lower Ninth Ward from the early 1800s to post-Katrina. And so many people came to that space looking for the Katrina stories and all of that. Now there is a whole Katrina museum downtown that offers a very sanitized history of what happened during that man-made disaster. But it is part of the Louisiana museum system. So there's only so much that can be shared honestly and openly. And that's one of the things that we grapple with as we expanded. We wanted to still be able to be open and honest with the conversations that we're having about all of the different issues that really affect not only our immediate neighborhood, but our broader community. So, yeah.
That's great. Thank you.
You're welcome.
Any other
Thank
questions?
y'all.
I have a question for Ms. Tate. This is Michelle. I was just wondering what made you persevere? Like when you got to high school and things were so hard, did you feel you had to do it, or did you feel you had a choice, or just having gone through that as a child and then as a as a young teenager, what made you keep doing it?
I didn't talk about it for years. After high school, it was in the back of my mind. I didn't share that story with anybody. I was overwhelmed. Oh my God, I didn't even go to academic college. I went to a business college, and I stayed that way for many years. I don't think I really got open with discussing it till the time when I was really after Katrina, when I really didn't want them to tear that building down. It was years that Tessa Gale and I would talk about it amongst ourselves, but we wouldn't share that story with anybody. And to me, because it just didn't seem to matter. Nobody, the anniversary day would come up, you didn't see anything about it, on the news. And it was till we start putting it out there ourselves is when things start coming to light, But now visiting schools, and I see where it needs to be talked about.
Right.
It really.
This is Donna. I just have a comment. Did anybody else notice that one of the protesters held up a Bible?
Yep.
Yeah.
Yep.
That is just heartbreaking.
Well, and most of the private schools after white flight were religious schools as well.
Yeah.
And it was used as the justification.
Florida too. Both the schools I went to, the Catholic school down the street, all of them for sure, white flight schools. If you look at when they were founded.
But something I did want to pull up, and might be a slight left, is we're talking about what does this mean for our daily lives? And something, Dr. Tate, that just stuck out to me was you said, the anniversary would pass and nobody would recognize it. And I think all of us have anniversaries of certain things that have happened to us. I know for me, and I keep encouraging people, like, as they've now come through breast cancer, to be able to talk about it and make sure that the people around you know, because people feel like they are unseen. And so much of what we need to be doing in the church is building those relationships so that we know the story, so that we know the history, so that, you know, Leona, you wouldn't have gone that many years without, you know, people knowing and you feeling like you were unseen, or somebody who's going through cancer, or the percentages of people that have had miscarriages and nobody talks about it, and you don't know until you've had one, and all of a sudden you mention it and somebody goes, "Oh, I had one too. Oh, I had one too." And how many of us can go through in our lives and mention something where we have anniversaries, but because we're not in those relationships, because we're not allowing God to enter into those relational spaces, that those anniversaries are being missed and we're not feeling seen. And so that's just something to put in the back of our minds as we're thinking, how do we apply this? That's just one thing that popped into my head.
Well, when the students come, I ask that they not get angry or feel bad about that sad story, but let's take and do something positive with it. Let's turn it around. You know, we've had a few students with outbursts at different schools, what they wouldn't do or what they would do. And I try to tell them that's not the way to handle that. We don't want to do it that way. But I don't do it for the limelight. I don't do it. I do it because I feel like they need to know. They need to appreciate what people did for them years ago. They really do.
I just wanted to add, I think the fact that you reclaim that history and the building and what you're doing for the students is so empowering. In general, just for the schools and for the students, and that you're sharing your history with them is so empowering.
Thank you.
It definitely paves the way for others to see how they can reclaim their pain and turn those times of death into resurrection.
So,
thank you.
Yeah.
Any other questions or comments or thoughts?
We want to thank y'all deeply from the bottom of our hearts. And Sarah's going to be sending us some links if y'all would like to contribute to the work that they're doing. We will have the opportunity to do so.
Just spread the word. Spread the word. Let people know we're there.
Yeah.
Well, that's the thing. Lots of people come to New Orleans to come visit. Send them our way. But also the TEP Talks are a great way, because those are normally online, right, Tremaine?
Yes.
Yeah.
So you can also give us your email and you can be put on the newsletter list, and that will give you that space. You can also follow them on Instagram and on Facebook. And all of that information is on the resource page that I sent out, or that Ben sent out graciously, I think on Monday. But we could probably also share that CBS link.
Yeah, I'll send out the link for the video, but I'll send those specific resources again.
And you know what else we could send? The Chase virtual tour.
Yeah.
So Chase Bank was one of the funders that helped to get the building restored. And they have put together a virtual tour of what the space is going to look like once we get the permanent exhibits put in. And it's a pretty cool experience. Like, you can turn your phone, and as you do, you actually like turn around in the room so you can see everything, and it feels similar to walking through the space.
Very nice.
And this is the group that we're hoping to have folks to come, right?
Right.
Yeah.
Cool. We are. Yeah,
I'm excited about that.
Figuring out that timing.
What'd you say, Ben?
I said we just got to figure out the timing, but very much looking forward to it. Awesome.
Well, y'all are definitely welcome. We love company.
Awesome. Thanks.
And we feed you.
Okay.
Well, I was gonna say, so Matt is working on trying to build a huge table on our porch. So maybe it'll be done by then, and we can have a huge dinner on our table on our porch.
Oh, that'd be great. That'd be great. Well, thank you again. I'm going to go ahead and close out this time of prayer, and then if y'all wanted to chat online and discuss a little bit more, and then we'll chat in person and discuss a little bit.
That's good.
If you're ready to leave, feel free to leave. But unless someone else wanted to close the prayer, I always want to offer. But I'm happy to do so. God, thank you so much. Thank you.
Yeah.
Thank you for work that Dr. Tate not only did as a child, but we thank you for Tremaine and for the way that Dr. Tate trusted in you through this journey. Not knowing where to go, not knowing how it was going to come out, or how long it would be. But paved the way for all the children. For now, adults. She was willing to love those who weren't loving her. In a truly divine act that. And so we give you thanks and we give you praise for our lives that we can learn and grow through the inspiration that they are to us.
Amen.
Thank you, guys. We do have 12 minutes. Leona Tremaine, you're more than welcome to stay on, or you can go either way. But Ben, you're going to mute everything on that end, so we're not driving you nuts.
Yeah, we're going to mute this end so we don't drive you nuts.
Thank everybody.
Thank you. Thank you.
Really awesome to meet you guys. Thank you so much.
Thank you.
Thank you.